small but nearby. 79 wains of Yarmish dates at 7 rings a wain is 563 rings. 553, she corrected him, almost without thinking. The civil servant rechecked his figures and then nodded. 553, yes, you're correct. The tariffs were less than 50 rings last year, she grumbled, keeping up the pretense that she cared. Out of my hands, I'm afraid, the man said apologetically. The Liberty tariffs are calculated by the prognosticator's office. Ellisdottir rolled her eyes. When did someone else's liberty become more important than my prosperity? She protested, fiercely, though her heart wasn't really in it. She untied the pouch from her belt and opened it. With deft hands, made agile from years of practice, she counted out 23 crowns and 83 rings into the hapless civil servant's hands. I'll need a receipt for that, she said, as he looked around for somewhere to put the money. She rolled her eyes again as he stood helplessly holding the pile of coins in his hand, before handing him a second empty pouch to dump the newly collected taxes in. She exchanged the newly filled pouch for the ship's tally board, holding the taxes for him while the civil servant used the board to write out the receipt. She examined it carefully to make sure it was complete. But the civil servant was already leaving, heading back up the stairs to the deck. She idly fingered the crown she had deftly filched from the pouch as he disappeared from view, smiling at it wanly. She still had it, she thought to herself. Why bother, Captain, given, Is it worth risking that for a crown? Her first mate rarely questioned her orders, but he was clearly troubled by the theft. 30 rings, she corrected him instinctively. Just enough that will turn a small profit on the dates. Besides, it's for liberty. I have liberated that poor coin from the Empire's cruel grasp. We don't need it, not with... His voice trailed off again and she glared at him. Loose lips sink ships. We need it more than the Senate does. Hard to argue with that, though she knew he was right, really. Lifting rings from dead men's fingers while moving a hold full of cheap dried fruit was one thing, but she was catching the crown but losing the throne, and he knew it. He'll be back in his office in 2 hours' time. It'll take him an hour to count and tally it off, then he'll send for me. Tell Ranulph, Arne, and the others to armour up ready, and I'll go down mob-handed. And then, when every eye is on me paying up, you get the silk off the ship and over to Merkin's on Fetler Street. Speak to Karina, the prince. Nobody else mind. And tell her it's the finest Yarmish silk money can buy, and we won't take a ring less than 3 thrones a bolt. We could have just waited for nightfall like everyone else does, Ellisdottir, named the Thief of the Moon, grinned at her first mate. But I'm not like everyone else, Hamo. And that's why you crew for me. Overview. The Empire is not free from foreign influence. It is surrounded by smaller nations who are close enough to have an impact on its politics. Farad'n, Axos, the Iron Confederacy, and Otkadov. Each nation has their own agenda. Only Axos is a signatory of the Liberty Pact, and the Empire has placed trading sanctions against each of its other neighbours. There is little constancy in international politics, and the complex interplay of politics and diplomacy can change the relations between nations in an instant. As such, the broad overviews discussed here represent only the state of play as it is generally understood at the start of the autumn equinox. This wind of fortune only covers the local nations. Developments involving the great powers of the world and matters of the Orc nation surrounding the Empire are detailed elsewhere. Citadels of Axos. The Citadels of Axos are signatories to the Liberty Pact. They have placed sanctions on trade with slaving nations. The ambassador to Axos is Tarquinius Ancarian of Urizen. There is still much upheaval in the Citadels of Axos, as the Grand Illarks work to encourage their people to focus their efforts in trade and commerce with the Empire and the Sarkovan Delves. Following an opportunity which was presented last season, the General Assembly of the Imperial Synod passed a mandate presented by Maximilian and Carian. Over the last season, members of the Prognosticator's Office have worked hard to analyse the opportunities that the Empire could capitalise on to encourage trade with Axos. More details on these opportunities can be found elsewhere. The Axu, as signatories of the Liberty Pact, have been invited to the upcoming meeting and are sending a delegate to Anvil. Tunnels of Kaban. An Illark has come forward to claim descent from Kaban. The efforts to rebuild the tunnels of Kaban have increased. Of some importance to the Axu, and of interest to the Empire, is the state of the westernmost surviving citadel, the tunnels of Kaban. The citadel was all but destroyed during conflict with the Malum some years ago, and the wealthiest inhabitants fleeing east to the gates of Ipotavo. During 380 YE, Imperial captains helped the Ipotavan forces reclaim the citadel and drive out the Druge, but the citadel was badly damaged in the process. Reconstruction has been slow, at least in part due to the recent crisis in Axu society over the slavery question. Whilst there has been a steady attempt to rebuild, the majority of the wealthy Ile of Kaban have remained in Ipotavo, without a single guiding hand on the rebuilding efforts. Little progress has been made though an Illark, Penthesil Leraphon of Kaban, has come forward to lay a claim to the throne and the crown of Kaban. Penthesil has revealed she is a descendant of the sorcerer king Kaban, who raised the citadel during the founding of the nation. Rather than look solely to her own people, Illark Penthesil Leraphon has sent out a call for aid to signatories of the Liberty Pact. While Kaban is in ruins, the northwestern borders of Axos are poorly defended. More to the point, if the Empire ever wishes to establish an overland trade route with Axos, the tunnels of Kaban would be the best citadel, best positioned to help oversee such trading routes. She has asked that for the moment, any messengers from Imperials prepared to offer aid with the reconstruction of Kaban be directed to Illark Maxatios, as her work encouraging the rebuilding rarely sees her in any one place for long. The damage to the citadel was extensive, but the Axau are nothing if not talented architects and engineers. It is likely that what the new Grand Illark will need most will be white granite and money to buy more. Although the civil service have noted that imperial recognition of her claim to the crown and the throne will also help to secure her position among the other Grand Illarks. The Orc situation. The rights of orcs in Axos society remain very limited. There is a call for the Synod to urge imperial citizens to help orcs wishing to leave Axos to come to the Empire. Despite some overtures from the Empire, the rights of the newly freed orc slaves in Axos remains extremely poor. As detailed previously, there are severe restrictions on orcs living in Axos, including limited ownership of property, prohibitions against carrying weapons, and few opportunities to participate in religion. Not only are the orcs very much second-class citizens in Axos, their ability to move around freely is harshly curtailed. Amid Axos concerns that the freed slaves will seek to join the enemies of Axos, the Druge and the Grendel, it is a serious crime for any orc to try and leave the nation by any means. So far, the Grand Illarks have politely rejected all offers by imperial citizens to offer their assistance. In the past, the Imperial Synod has been reasonably clear about the need to help slaves and former slaves. Furthermore, the Imperial Orcs have more than once offered sanctuary to those freed from oppression, most recently with the mandate of Bloodcrow Udu. In recent months, a preacher named Snowbound Dakar a teacher in the Legion's rookery in Skarsind, has inspired calls for the Imperial Orcs to take action to help their cousins in Axos. While there have been some statements about the plight of the Orcs in the Eastern Nation, such as that raised by Maximilian in spring, they do not go far enough in highlighting the terrible situation. At the moment, helping Orc citizens escape from Axos by ship is the only viable option as far as snowbound Dakar can see. At least until the recently proposed spy network in Sarengrave is complete, or until the Empire is able to better gain maps of the Grendel territory of Merave. Snowbound Dakar has no mandate herself, but is asking the Imperial Orc priest to attend Anvil to raise a strongly worded statement of principle, urging Imperial Orc ship captains to help any Orcs in Axos who wishes to try and leave what she sees as the tyranny of the human government. She has further called for anyone who cares about the plight of the Axos Orcs to put pressure on the wider synod. While a statement by the Imperial Orcs would be a good start, a statement supported by a greater majority of the General Assembly, or even the Assembly of Nine, urging Imperial citizens to help Orcs flee Axos, would be much more effective. Trade with Axos. Imperial fleets visiting Cantor experience a 1-rank penalty to their production this season. The transition from a nation where slavery was legal, if not widespread, to one where it is illegal has not been without some turmoil. The sudden release of slaves, and the need for many businesses and other wealthy concerns to reorganize themselves, means that the economy is very much in flux. The immediate effect is that there are significantly fewer goods available to purchase on the docks at Cantor. Ilarch Maxatius has appealed to Imperial traders not to let this disruption discourage them from coming to the towers of Cantor. Indeed, as per the civil service estimation, the situation has recovered somewhat since the spring equinox, but will not resume normal levels until after the autumn equinox 383 YE at the very earliest. The Empire has instituted sanctions against the Farad'n. The Farad'n have not yet applied their own sanctions. The ambassador to Farad'n is Erasmo di Tassato of the League. 2 groups of Farad'n journeyed to Anvil last summit. The first was at the invitation of both the Assembly of Nine and the ambassador to Farad'n to discuss their culture. This is believed to have gone well enough that the Voice of Liberty has called on the signatories of the Liberty Pact to meet at Anvil at the upcoming autumn equinox. The Farad'n have been invited to the upcoming meeting of the signatory nations of the Liberty Pact and are sending a delegate to Anvil. An unpleasant altercation. 3 Imperial citizens were assaulted during the summer solstice by Farad'n thugs. The other group of Farad'n, however, were not invited and assaulted at least 3 Imperial citizens. There has been no response from Lady Saretta of the Red Moon regarding the identity of these individuals, though some Farad'n traders have pointed out that according to the Farad'n, Livia of the Spire of the Celestial Cascade, Lord Colwyn de Rondel, and Astrid Fjellravening Rezia di Tassato are all responsible for issuing a great slight against a significant cultural hero of Farad'n, as detailed in Volume 5 of the Echoes of the Labyrinth. As the autumn equinox approaches, however, news begins to filter through from the west that the situation has escalated further. Nothing is specifically written down, but there are reports that the Modnos family of Farad'n have placed a bounty on the lives of Livia, Astrid and Lord Colwyn. With the assistance of one of the Farad'n wizarding families, so the story goes, they have arranged that if the heart of one or more of these 3 criminals is placed in a box of gold and then dispatched to the city of gold and lead with the Ephesus scale ritual, the return box will contain 10 thrones for each one. Nobody official Nobody associated with the Farad'n embassy will confirm this story. Regardless, the Farad'n merchants still trading with the Empire believe it, and reportedly claim that while such arrangements are rare, they are certainly not unknown in Farad'n. OOC note: if you are interested in collecting the bounty, please secure the assistance of the referee before undertaking this kind of player versus player conflict. Removing the heart would require a minute or so of appropriate role-playing with the body. The referee will be able to provide you with a ribbon for the heart, which you should attach to a suitable physrep and keep in an in-character area until it is placed in an Ephesus box. Imperial Law. There has been a suggestion made that the Farad'n could be granted access to Imperial law, in much the same way as the Commonwealth. This could be granted with a simple declaration of concord passed through the Imperial Conclave, which would need to be worded to explicitly grant the magicians of Farad'n permission to learn from Imperial law. This would see a steady number of visitors from the magical families keen to expand their knowledge in all 6 realms. There would also be a slight increase in taxation from the increased numbers of magicians and their servants travelling to the Empire. Smuggling. I'm not saying that this is the fault of the Farad'n, I'm not. But it totally is. Maybe if they stopped spending so much time talking about how vigilance is fear, they'd understand that it's actually pretty fucking useful to know what your citizens are doing. Maria Jacora von Savos, thief-taker. Rumours continue unabated regarding reports of the smuggling, though there is still no confirmation one way or another as to whether Farad'n merchants are entering the Empire in secret through northern Segura and southern Karaman. There has been a slight drop in trade from Farad'n. There has yet to be any suggestion put forward that would be of any use in attempting to discover and putting an end to any potential smuggling coming from Farad'n, though Maria Jacora von Savos, a thief-taker, did suggest that as all of the theoretical smuggling is going on through freeborn territories, maybe the Freeborn National Assembly could try raising a statement of principle about it. There was one incident reported with some Farad'n traders travelling through the southwest of Karaman. According to a patrol of soldiers from the Green Shield, they came across a caravan in a disused mine where they had been attacked. Of the dozen merchants and their guards, only 3 had managed to survive their injuries, and when questioned by the captain, they claimed they were on their way to the town of Damata. There was a symbol daubed on the wagons, purportedly by the attackers. The order was given to escort them the rest of the way to Damata, along with the bodies of their deceased. Iron Confederacy. The Empire has placed sanctions on the merchants from the Iron Confederacy. The Surani have responded with an embargo on imperial goods. The ambassador to the Iron Confederacy is Vladimir Sasha Volkov, of Varushka. Baroness Katerine Lavas of Mayor, as the diplomatic representative of the Dukes of the Iron Confederacy to the Empire, informs the Imperial Civil Service that a representative of her house, Sir Pippin Lavas, intends to visit Anvil during the winter solstice, 383 YE, in order to meet with the ambassador to the Iron Confederacy. There have been numerous suggestions at the embassy in Savos that the reason for giving so much notice is to ensure that the ambassador can guarantee that there is no unforeseen circumstance arising that might result in the postponing of the meeting. Sir Pippin Lavas would prefer to travel overland, but as the Empire is currently defending itself from invasion in both Feroz and Segura, he intends to travel by ship to Savos, resting in the embassy there before journeying on to Anvil. The Hand of Duman. We, the Synod, invite any interested parties from the Iron Confederacy to visit the High Watch camp within Urizen at Anvil, so they can gain understanding of the details of the true way. We further encourage priests of the way to meet the visitors and aid in their education. Palladius of High Watch, Statement of Principle, General Assembly, Summer Solstice. Upheld. 786-276. Following an invitation from the General Assembly, a delegation from the Hand of Dumont are journeying to Anvil to discuss the way. They are expected to arrive at 3 in the afternoon on Saturday. They will journey first to the High Watch camp in Urizen. During the summer solstice, Palladius of High Watch raised a statement of principle in the General Assembly seeking to bring interested parties from the Iron Confederacy to Anvil in order to discuss the way. Florent Chapius and Abela Gaubert have crossed the border in Feroz, journeying into Madruga, and travelled by ship to Savos, before joining with a merchant caravan making its way to Cassinea. Abelia is very interested in discussing the way with Palladius, and any other Empyrean who wishes to talk to her. Florent, meanwhile, has not made a secret of the fact that he hopes very much to have a chance to talk to any who are blessed by Dumont. The pair of Surani are anticipated to arrive around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the Saturday of the autumn equinox. Trade with the Iron Confederacy. The Iron Confederacy has closed its borders to imperial merchants and goods. The port of Robec has been closed to imperial traders. The port of Robec remains closed to imperial ships, as does the land border from the southern Brass Coast. A few imperial citizens still visit the Confederacy, but they report being closely watched, and following the executions at Robec, even this trickle has largely dried up. Imperial sanctions still permit Surani merchants to come north, but the increased tariff on their goods, and the fact it is currently illegal to bring imperial produce into the Confederacy, and the ongoing conflicts in Segura and Feroz, means fewer and fewer are making the effort.